Good morning. We're here at Half Lake, and this is by request. I wouldn't say popular request, but a few of you have asked for us to do kind of like a weed walk, a like nature walk around Half Lake. And it's a really beautiful time. There's a kingfisher actually in the distance. You won't be able to see him, but he just popped into the water and I heard his rattle, his belted rattle in the morning. The mist is just coming off of the pond, and we spooked 3 black ducks, unfortunately, just now. Sandra just caught the last tail of them flying away. But I thought we would just talk about like the management of this area, because when we got here, most of this had been mowed. They pretty much mowed right up to the edge of the pond. And I just wanted to share like what management actually looks like when maybe you mow less or you don't mow at all. And in this case, we have around I would say 4 to 5 foot buffer around this pond that we do not mow. So we have obviously this path that's mowed in between, and we leave the rest go wild. And it's just pretty amazing the plant life that comes up when you let it go wild. And we never really mow this. We never really prune it. The only thing we do is if there's something egregious that we deem egregious, maybe it's like a multiflora rose or a Japanese honeysuckle, we'll usually take that out. Not all the time. You'll see a few of those in here. You'll see some autumn olives and everything along those lines. But I wanted to point out some of the plants that you will see around here. One of the things that you'll notice is that we have lots of goldenrods, and you'll see this one in bloom. And you know, goldenrods are really hard to identify. There's so many of them, and there's some that look alike. So I might not get all of these exactly right, but I've been walking here with one of the naturalists of the area, and he's been pointing out different ways to kind of tell plants apart. And I know that this one, which has a bit more of a pyramidal shape, this is Solidago altissima. Altissima, like alto, tall, tall. So this actually becomes quite a tall goldenrod. And we are in the season now, I guess it's early September. So we're in the season now where you're starting to see a lot of goldenrod come out, and some asters. So we don't have all of our asters out yet, but this is a good example. And it is an incredible pollinator plant. And if you recall in our specialist bee, native bee video, goldenrod is one of those really important plants. One of the other things I'll point out, and this has a nice like airy shape, and it has this little umbel that's coming out, and this is related to poison hemlock. And this is also a poisonous plant, but this is water hemlock. And you could see that to me it looks like in the family Apiaceae, like a parsley plant, or Daucus carota, which is our wild carrot. So you could see that coming in, and I've noticed that last year, and I was like, that reminds me of hemlock, not the tree hemlock, but the kind of poison hemlock. And yes, so that is related. It's called water hemlock. The other interesting one is this one that reminds me of a persicaria. It has this little white kind of ball on top, and if you grab the stem, you'll realize it sticks to you. See, it's sticking to my skin. You might think I have like really rough skin, but actually the stem is rough. And this has an amazing common name. It's called tear thumb. And obviously it likes these liminal watery areas. So it's not just necessarily growing in the water, but it's growing out. And the idea of having this kind of border between pond or stream or river or seep is a really important habitat for so many animals and wildlife. So we'll often have these little paths that come right down to the water, because this is where animals will come to drink water. But you also have amazing amphibian and reptile life, and of course insect life. So a lot of insects are aquatic insects, and they'll spend either part of their life or all of their life underwater. Typically it's part of their life. So if you think about dragonflies, damselflies, mayflies, stoneflies, crane flies, Dobson flies, a number of others, they will have their larval stage underwater, believe it or not. And then that also provides a lot of food for fish, which we have largemouth bass in here, and frogs and toads. and it just is abounding with life. So leaving this as kind of like a wildlife corridor, I think is really important to us at least. Another plant that I will make mention of, you could see that it's a little fresher here. And if I break it, it will have a little bit of a milky sap. Now, what plant do you know does that? Like common milkweed, right? So yes, this is not a milkweed, but it's in the milkweed family. So it's not an Asclepias because milkweed is an Asclepias. And this one is when it's a little bit past its prime. And again, you'll see the seeds. They kind of are like these long-shaped pods. This comes in two. And it's very similar to milkweed in the sense that milkweed also has pods, although they're a bit more robust. And this is hemp dogbane. So this is one of our dogbanes. It's in the milkweed family, but it also provides, although it's not necessarily a host for monarchs, it really has a great community of insects that live and use it. Like we recently just took photos of like the dogbane beetle, which is a beautiful metallic beetle. So we kind of let this area grow wild with the hemp dogbane, and you could see all of a sudden that solidago is coming in. There's so much to see in just this little area, but we'll continue because all of this is like sedges. You could see these are sedges coming in. I'll have to get you the name of this one. I think it might be Camosum, but I'm not quite sure. And then here is a different goldenrod altogether. So you'll see this one coming up. They have completely different leaves, completely different stature. So you can see this one starting to become more pyramid-like. And then this one here has a bit more of a flat top, almost like an achillea, like a yarrow. And this is a different type of goldenrod, and it's in a different species of goldenrod. This is called Euthamia graminifolia. Gramin is like a grass-like, and graminifolia, foliage like the leaf. So this is grass-like foliage goldenrod, grass-leaved goldenrod it's often called. So it has this thinner leaf. It tends to grow just about everywhere here, a little bit in the meadow, but it really likes these wet areas as well. And this is a deeper kind of yellow-orange than the regular goldenrod, and it blooms a bit earlier than some of this altissima, as you could see here. This is a really interesting one over here. This is I believe an endangered, if not threatened or endangered plant, and this is Mimulus alatus. So we have another one that's native here called Mimulus ringens. I haven't seen that one yet, but this one has a nice light, almost like pinkish lavender flower, and there are clumps of this coming up everywhere, and I'm really enjoying seeing that. So I have planted some plants in this area, I will say, but a lot of this stuff is just coming up on its own. Are you catching that spider web right there? Yeah. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, some kind of orb weaver. It's the best time to see the spider webs like really early in the morning. Oh, there's some of the black ducks. They're wondering if they could come back.
We want to subscribe.
Like and subscribe. All right, so this one is another one. It's not in full bloom yet because we're out too early in the morning, so the flowers haven't opened up. I have never seen so much. This is called epilobium. It's a willow leaf herb. We have so many different types of this growing everywhere, and I have never seen so much of it in my entire life. It's just that there's so many different species of it growing here. So I pull it out usually typically from the garden, and we have some native varieties and some non-native varieties. It's not like invasive or anything, but it just seems to have a very cosmopolitan habitat, I guess. Here's another type of sedge. You could see here, I'll have to get you the name of this one. Its seed head is just starting to kind of fade. And something that you won't get to see today, it basically blooms for a day, and this is our hibiscus. This is one of our native swamp hibiscuses. And I had planted a couple of these, some that are cultivar, some that are species, and it is just basically kind of taking over the place. They get into these really big bushes, and maybe about 8 to 10 feet tall up to. So these are quite small, but I've noticed that they're very happy around here because like I only planted 1 or 2, and look at them now. I mean, we'll walk and you'll see quite a few. This one was tagged by Robert, and I think this is one of the ones that I had planted. Now this is a eupatorium, but it's Hyssopifolium, so it's not usually found in this area, but it kind of tends to like this kind of marginal habitat. So I planted it because we have a lot of Eupatorium perfolatum, which is bone set, which I'll show you in a bit. Here's some other, I think this is kind of like a scirpus. These are like rushes. So rushes are round. You'll see that these have round stems, and you'll see a few different kinds here. And we'll see more of those as we walk down. So you can see we haven't really, Sandra likes to keep things moving, and we haven't really moved that much because there's just really so much to see. This is something interesting. I guess this is another goldenrod coming up right here. And this looks like something that could be interesting, maybe some type of aster. There's a lot of asters that haven't come in yet. So I think like, mid-September, late September, that's when you get like more asters. All the birds have moved out of the house. Folks have asked about this plant. Obviously it's past flower, and this is kind of the carcass, the seed heads. And they're very stately, they're very structural and architectural. And this is teasel, it's not a native plant. We usually try to control for some of this because it does have a tendency to seed, and it's very hard to cut down because it gets really stocky and woody. But they put out these really beautiful conical purple inflorescences that pollinators absolutely adore. And I tell myself, well, I'll try to get out right after the flower so it doesn't seed. And that's usually really hard. You have to time it, and that doesn't usually work out. This is a hibiscus that I have planted in here that typically would give you the type of hibiscus that you could then basically make tea with. So that beautiful red hibiscus tea. And it seems to have taken off here. We'll see how good it gets on through the winter. And then back right behind it, this is called burnweed. Kind of I would say a bit of a weed. It's obviously in the Asteraceae family. It kind of reminds me of like wild lettuce. So that's something that pops up here and there. Now this white flower, flat-topped white flower, an incredible medicinal, considered with its antiviral properties that you use basically the flower heads for. So if you were to collect it, now's the time to collect it. This is called bone set, Eupatorium perfolatum. And this has great pollinator potential. So if you are collecting something for medicinal purposes, I always just keep in mind that there's other creatures that use these plants, and I'll often just go in there and maybe cut off a few little flower heads at a time and make sure that you're not like taking everything off at once, because these are incredible plants for birds, especially, for pollinators, especially so late in the season, because as we're approaching winter, there's less and less flowers that are available. So you won't see any pollinators on this now. It's a little too chilly in the morning, but as soon as the sun starts over here, the flies and the wasps and the bees are going to be all over this. I'll see if I could find a picture of this or some video earlier in the year. This is one that is not native to the area, but this is Filipendula rubra. It's also called cotton candy plant. It's also known as a medicinal plant. A lot of these are considered medicinal, but this one is bright pink. These flowers are bright pink, and I've noticed that it gets eaten, probably by deer or something, but this is one of the plants that I normally didn't get a chance to see flower last year because all the heads were bitten off. But this one actually made it, maybe because it's getting closer to the water. This is a different kind of solidago, so you'll see this has a completely different habit. Basically, it's not a pyramid shape, but it's kind of growing almost like an arc. So that's a dead giveaway that this is actually something else. Maybe a Junkia. I'm not sure. I'll have to get a positive ID on you. I'm not really great at my solidagos quite yet. I'm still working on it. Now this one I do know, this is an aster, and this is Punecia, Symphyotrichum punecium, also called purple-stemmed aster or swamp aster. And I think both are really good descriptors of this plant because you'll see that it has purple stems, but it also is growing in swampy habitat, and it's growing right up against the edge of the pond. So again, these are places where plants can stick their little roots into the water and reach down even when things are relatively droughty. And you'll be able to see some pretty interesting plants that you would not get to see in the meadow or on the interstitials of the forest or anything of that nature. So over here, since Saunder's in the water mucking about, you'll see some beautiful hibiscus. And this is one of the cultivars that I planted. I think this is called Midnight Marvel. And this one is actually in full bloom right now. But you'll see that the blooms really fade quickly, and then they will pop out during the day and then kind of fade as it goes on. And then there's a pink version, a pink and white version kind of over just to the left over here as well. So that's really nice. So this one I nearly stepped on, but this is a type of mint. It doesn't have any type of minty smell, but you could see that the flowers kind of wrap around the stem just above the petiole of it, so they rest on the petioles of the leaves. So that's a pretty cool one. We have a couple different mints here that like it a little bit more wet. Monarda didyma, which is our scarlet bee balm, is also in here, although it's not really blooming right now, so I could probably point out the leaves if I see it. But here's one little wasp that made it to the bone set. So you can see that this bone set is in full bloom, and it looks like a yellow jacket. And this area is obviously a little bit more sunny, so you'll probably start to see insects flock to this area a bit before the other areas. So last year I had a really interesting plant growing right here. I don't see it this year, unfortunately, so I won't be able to point that out to you. And you'll notice, like, you'll plant plants in a certain place and then they'll just seed elsewhere. So I had 2 lobelia cardinalis that were here. I see one has come up, and you can see that there's quite a lot of lobelia that's kind of growing around it, and this is some bone set coming in. But it's also started to seed around. So if you look in the distance, lots of it has cropped up, and that generally seeds pretty well if it's not too weedy in the area. So I was pretty happy to see that. And then here, just watch where you're stepping, because this looks like a lizard's tail right here. So this one has a really interesting leaf. So this kind of gets a little inflorescence that looks like a fuzzy lizard's tail. And then this one right here, I can't go too close because I'll probably fall in the water, looks like a Sagittaria to me. This is prunella or self-heal. So this one is a common one that has come in. It's not necessarily a native one, but has just kind of fit really nicely in with the matrix of grasses and sedges all throughout the land. Here's some more of that other mint that I was telling you about. This one has a kind of a reddish leaf, probably because it gets in the sun a bit more. Now this is typical to see on goldenrod. This is a gall. Oh yep, that's some Lobelia cardinalis right there. But some folks will see this and wonder what it is, and this is a little fly that creates a gall. And this is actually an important source of food for birds in the winter as well. But there is a little fly larvae that's eating in there. It doesn't kill the goldenrod in any kind of way, but it's something to look out for, because then you know obviously you're looking at a goldenrod. Here is calico aster. So this is one of our really cute asters, and this will start to get, you could see all the different inflorescences that are going to be coming on this plant. Like look at, this basically becomes a blanket of flowers. And again, a really important pollinator plant late in the season. This one in the sun right now is obedient plant. This is called Physostegia virginiana. And it's so cute to see the little bees trying to get down here, and they just fit their little body right down in there. I was photographing the other day on my Canon camera, and they just like fit their little fat bodies right down in there, which is really cool to see. This is a plant called bidens, B-I-D-E-N-S, no, not politically affiliated. And this one gets a little yellow flower on top, nothing fancy, but this is also a specialist pollinator plant. People don't tend to like it. They consider it weedy. It's called beggar's ticks because basically those are these little kind of spear-like things that attach to your pant legs. You'll definitely know if you walked in the country, you'll definitely know what they are. You might not know their name, but you definitely are like scraping them off your socks, or if you have a dog that goes and runs out, they'll be like attached to like matted fur or anything along those lines. So this is an iris. This is not our native iris. Unfortunately, these are ones that had been planted here, but we have some of our native irises and they're kind of in the distance, but they're like, I didn't show you those. They're not in bloom. You would only ever see leaves anyway, but that's basically what an iris, iconic iris leaf looks like. Some more Lobelia cardinalis, but you might say, wow, this looks very similar. And this is Lobelia sulphiticum, which is also a native, and it just has this kind of purplish blue flower, which is nice to see. And then this one over here is not yet in bloom, another late bloomer. And I really got into asters, and I found out that we have in New York a native tree aster. And I was like, wow, a tree aster, that's crazy. And so this one is not native to this region, but it's native to kind of like a bit more of like Long Island, like the salt flats. It grows in really salty conditions. And this has been used as places where there's a lot of road salt. And this is Baccharis helminifolia. And it does get these little aster-like flowers and aster-like seed heads. And I planted it the first year and it died back. I think it was just too small and didn't get established before all the grasses grew up. This one was a slightly larger plant, maybe half the size, and now it's really taken off. So I'm pretty stoked about that. So this is another calico aster growing up here. And then this one is that Physostegia, that obedient plant. Let's see what else. Now this is more of the iconic look of that pyramid. You could really see this here on this Solidago altissima. So you could see that pyramid shape. And there are two other species that look very similar to this, and that you could only really tell maybe by the length of the floret, and that is Solidago canadense and also Solidago gigantea. So those are two that kind of come to mind that looks very similar to that. Let's keep on going on and see what else we could see. Some more hibiscus kind of past their prime. Now this one is a common one you'd see in permaculture. It's become quite invasive, so I would encourage you not to plant it. This hasn't been as invasive as I would say the multiflora rose or the honeysuckle. So we cut them down sometimes, but not always. And this is autumn olive. It's in the Eleaginus genus. And this is a time where people actually collect the berries. So as you could probably guess, the birds will collect the berries and spread them around. And they kind of have a little bit of I think a little sour, punchy taste, but folks will like to dry them. They turn them into like fruit leather and everything. I would think that they're very laborious to actually pick. You have to pick a lot. Now here, you'll see some kind of red leaves throughout here. And this is one of our native cornices. So this is a native dogwood. I'll show you a better version of them, but this is probably our gray dogwood coming up. And I'll show you a larger version that's over here. I don't know if you can see this. Check out this orb weaver. Well, this is a little teasel that has started to come up. And it looks like it had been chopped off, but you can see here's the purple inflorescences. So, you know, normally it would be kind of dry about now like this. And so you can see it here. Some of the Lobelia cardinalis, kind of almost post-bloom, so it's starting to go to seed. And then again, what is this? This is that water hemlock that you'll see kind of has this funny little structure. Oh, you know what? There were some interesting asters that I saw over here, and I might as well point them out because I haven't seen them elsewhere. This one is a subspecies of actually over here is even better because they're out. This is a subspecies of Symphyotrichum pilosum. This is subspecies Pringeri, or Pringlei. This is a Pringle's aster. And it probably should be its own species because it's not pilose at all. It has no hairs. And it has the tiniest little leaves. Look at those tiny leaves, tiny button-like flowers. And right next to it you'll see the calico aster, which has much thicker leaves. So if I pull this leaf off, so you'll see that is the leaf of the calico aster compared to the leaflets here of Pringle's aster. So that's a completely different aster. We should have a few more asters that are coming up as well. Like we have the Symphyotrichum novae anglii, which is New England's aster, is quite common here. Some of the stuff that's growing in our pollinator garden that we didn't plant is called linear aster, which gets really tall. Now I have a rhododendron that I've planted in here. So one of our native rhododendrons, which was blooming earlier. It looks like it did get a little chopped by some of our deer, but you could see that it's still right there. It's still quite small. And we're gonna go and see the altissima right here. Now this is a little different. We're starting to see something a little different. It has a completely different structure. So let's go see this. See this? It looks almost like fireworks. And actually there is a cultivar called Solidago rugosa fireworks. And it was selected for these long kind of flower spikes that come off of it. So you can see this is not pyramidal shape. This just looks like, to me, it just reminds me of fireworks. And this is a rugosa. And you'll see from the leaf that it has these fuzzy leaves, and they're kind of indented, so it almost looks bolete. It just has this texture to it. And it does have a furry stem. So the other one that I showed you didn't have a furry stem, and sometimes you'll have different forms, but this one definitely has a furry stem. So that's Rugose solidago. There's a lot of blackberries and raspberries over here. So these are just absolutely native. This is where I come back to get blackcaps, blackberries, raspberries. We have that all back here. Here's some more of that Rugose stuff. So you can see that this is a slightly younger one, but then it's right next to this kind of altissima and others that have that more pyramidal shape. So when you kind of blur your eyes, you're like, oh, this is all the same species of goldenrod, but it's not. And I think we have like maybe 8, 9, 10 different species when you're just kind of walking around here. Here's some Achillea, which is past bloom. So this is our common yarrow, and it is native to here. There's a lot of cultivated varieties that aren't native to here, but this is one that is native. And then, let's see, we have one more aster that I'd like to show you. It's kind of in the dark over here. This is Aster Symphyotrichum prenanthoides. And I noticed that this is one of our earlier blooming asters, maybe our earliest blooming aster. And it kind of hugs the ground. It doesn't get too high. It kind of scoots around the ground, which is really nice. And I'll show you a couple more. This is our St. John's wort. This is not a native, but a great medicinal. I was collecting on these plants, but this is a perfilatum. And then I will show you the gray dogwood because I promised that, and we're getting a little bit into the shadow of the sun right now. But this one right here in the back, you can see that it has these little white berries on it. And that is one of our gray dogwoods. It's kind of flanked by all of this solidago, all different types of solidago in here. So yeah, it's been really lovely to walk around the lake here. It's so pretty. And this is one of my favorite times to come. Normally because it's just beautiful in the fall time. So solidago, some of the asters coming up, you could see that this is another aster that's about to bloom. And maybe I'll show you some shots, in a couple weeks because it's gonna look incredible with the purples of the asters and the yellow goldenrods. But that's it. Hope you enjoyed that tour and you got to learn some more species of plants here. We'll be sharing how the gardens and wildscaped areas mature as the seasons progress, so if you enjoy videos like this, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notifications button to help us grow and share these videos to more folks. In the meantime, we'll be cracking away at more of the gardens and renovations here at Flock. We'll see you in the next video.